We have a C200 Elegance. It cost 5 years ago the same as the Ford did a year and a half ago.
Virtually to the penny, yeah, 24,000 and a bit, yes, that's right.
You don't get as many toys with the Mercedes. They're more basic, but you get the build quality.
That's right. As with most German cars, unfortunately, this is the Elegance at the time was actually quite high up the ladder for specification-wise. They are a very, very bland car. The Germans are renowned for that, but build quality is second to none.
It's an automatic, so that's one good plus point because the manuals are not particularly favoured.
No. In the Mercedes range, especially in the C-Class, is that you will find predominantly there is a lot more automatics than manuals. On the residual factor, a good piece of advice is always look for an auto, as they do keep better money.
So this car has lost 50% again, the same as the Ford, but it's lost it over 5 years, which is the key thing.
Yeah, if you look on the depreciation ladder, the cost of ownership on these two vehicles, the Mercedes is by far the one to own.
So in terms of sort of running costs, how would they compare?
Petrol-wise, really, obviously, what you'll find with the six-cylinder versus the four-cylinder is that this one will be a little bit heftier on the old petrol. Running costs and servicing, if you were to take these two dealers back, the two vehicles back to the respective dealers, you'll find the Mercedes cost of ownership on servicing will be slightly higher than the Ford. But there again, it will pay dividends because of the residual value when you come to sell it. A Mercedes with proper Mercedes service history is a car to be looking for as opposed to one that hasn't. The Ford there again, main dealer service history is not paramount, but will certainly help the vehicle and aid it in its value. So maybe the Mercedes is probably a few £100s a year more expensive to run in actual cost of ownership, but there again, you pay your money, you take your chance.
Is it really crucial, as we're told so often with the likes of, you know, the quality German brands like Mercedes and BMW, to have a fully stamped up full main dealer service history?
When it comes to the valuation point, yes. We think so. What you've got is we have like a team of valuers who value our cars, and obviously if they were to look at a service book from one that's got main dealer service history to one that's maybe, say, a reputable dealer who serviced it but not main franchise, that will have an effect on the value.
What sort of money-wise are we talking about? Is it like it's off £1,000 off the price?
Believe it or not, on some cases, but usually in the higher up range cars, or like the higher specified cars and the later ones, it can make such a difference of £1,000. Something like maybe on a 1994 car, it could still, for want of a better description, it could crab the car by probably around about £300 or £400. We have to retail these cars on to the general public, and at the end of the day, there's nothing nicer to sit there in front of a customer and say, there's your main dealer service history from Mercedes-Benz, or there's your service history from a dealer, but not a Mercedes dealer, is they will always favour, obviously, the authenticity of the original dealer.
Now, we all know that Mercedes build quality cars. They have a great reputation for build quality, for refinement, for superb comfort. But why do they make cars just so bland inside? This has always been one of the criticisms for me about the C-Class range in particular. Now, this is a C200 Elegance, so it's not the base classic range, which gets practically nothing on it. This should have a few bits and bobs on it, but it hasn't particularly. There's no air conditioning. There is a stereo, but it's not a sort of quality stereo system that you would expect to find on a car that costs £25,000 when it was new. There's no CD system. You get twin airbags, but the fascia and the general style is just really boring. If you want a Mercedes that isn't as boring as this, then you have to pay for it. And let's be honest, you have to pay through the nose for things like leather trim and all the other bits and bobs that you'd like to try and kind of spec the car up to a decent level that you would find on, well, something like the Scorpio that we've also just tested. But you also know that buying a Mercedes is an investment. It's a car that, sure, it depreciates, but it depreciates not at the rate that the Ford Scorpio does. This car, when it was new, as we've said, cost £24,000, practically the same as the Scorpio. But after 5 years, this is a 5-year-old car that's done 38,000 miles, and it's still worth 50% of its new value. And that is what you want to look for when you buy a used car. You do notice the difference in driving ability between the Mercedes and the Scorpio. This feels a lot sharper, a lot more precise in its turning. But it has one of those quirky things which I've never quite been able to work out with Mercedes. It still has a floor-hinged accelerator pedal, which actually takes a bit of getting used to because it can be quite sticky when you first put your foot down, and you sort of just have to gently, and then it sort of you lurch forward a little bit anyway. So this 200 model has got 136 brake horsepower engine, so it's way down on the 2.9 V6 in the Scorpio. There are lots of other different engines in the C-Class range, from the 180 through the 200. There's a 2.2, 2.4, 2.3 engines. Some of these are in production now and some not. Also the 2.8 V6, the one to look for maybe that's the best of the range, plus 2.5 diesel engines too, which offer excellent comfort and refinement and great fuel consumption.